Hello and welcome back to the Pleasureful Podcast. This is Lauren. I am so happy to be back. It has been a while since I have made a podcast and I am back in the swing of things. So much has landed for me. And by that, I mean like integrated and lessons that I've had and just really really embracing my feminine energy since I have moved to Mexico. And of course, when I'm embracing my feminine energy, that also means having to also embrace masculine energy because they both work hand in hand. They both work in balance. So I'm so happy to be back because I love sharing from my own experience so that I can help other women also step into their feminine energy. So if you're new around here, welcome. I'm Lauren. And this is my podcast, Pleasureful Podcast. This is like our second season, I suppose. And I teach women how to use feminine energy to build magnetism so that you and all women, and myself included, can magnetize what it is that we desire. And I specifically help women magnetize the man that she desires and the relationship that you and other women want to have in your life. I myself have gone through my own experiences of building my energy and using my magnetism and stepping into my feminine when I was so overly masculine. And stepping into my feminine has opened up so much for me, so much about trusting the process of life and allowing myself to forgive where I've been. And so, again, if you're new around here, welcome. I have older episodes that were at the start of my journey. You can also go back to those, but this season is going to be full of new episodes. Also, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see that I'm here in my Mexico apartment. So welcome in, or you might be watching or listening to this on Apple or Spotify. So welcome as well. And like I said, I have been in Mexico stepping into my feminine energy. And as I did so, my desire was to move to Mexico, work on my feminine energy, build my business at the same time. So working hand in hand, masculine, feminine energy, trusting the process. And I was like, I would love to meet a man along the way. I've always had this desire to be bilingual, to be with a partner that is also bilingual, that wants to live a wild, adventurous, deeply passionate, connected life. And there's so much that goes into it too. But y'all, I have attracted a wonderful man to me. I should use the word magnetized actually, that I magnetized a beautiful relationship. And now we're dating and we'll see where it goes. And again, I'm learning to trust the process rather than being like, it has to be this way or it should be like this. And again, it's like every time we get into a relationship, we go through the same things over and over again, but we just come at them with a new perspective. So this is why I teach women how to be in her feminine energy in a relationship so that she can learn these lessons of trusting herself, because they're going to continually come up in every relationship. And I believe once you're fully embracing and living in your feminine energy, you can magnetize all that it is that you want to use. So this season of this podcast is going to be all about embracing feminine energy, all about a lot of the lessons that I've learned along the way with feminine energy, how our masculine energy also supports our feminine energy. And today is going to be part one of suppressed feminine energy, talking about why our feminine energy has been suppressed, how it affects us mentally in our mind, how it affects how we function day to day, and also how it affects our body as women. And then part two will be on the opportunity that we have once we are aware that our feminine energy is suppressed, once we can see that as our biggest mirror, our biggest opportunity for us to step into, just to step into and embody the woman that we are meant to be, which doesn't mean that we become perfect. It just means that we own who we are. We accept the parts of ourselves that society says is wrong or is less desirable. So there's a huge opportunity here. So that will be part two. And I just want to say again, I am so excited to be back. I am such a talker. This is why I'm also a coach, because I love to talk to women. I love to process. I love to be in process. I love to hear experiences. I love to mirror back. So that's why I'm here on this podcast, so that you can also see yourself in me. You can see the potential opportunity into stepping into your feminine energy as I talk about the topics that I'm going to talk about regarding feminine energy. A woman that did this for me, my podcasting role model is Kelly Tennant, who is now Kelly Moore. And I'm just going to speak this desire into manifestation and land into fruition that hopefully in a year from now, she has an amazing podcast company. I want to work with her so much. So I'm speaking that out into the universe so y'all can know and be along for the journey along the way, along this growth of sharing in the journey of feminine energy. And I cannot wait to, at some point, be fully supported by those who have inspired me so much. So let's get started. Okay, so we all have masculine and feminine energy within us. It doesn't matter how you identify personally. We all have masculine and feminine energy within us. But this episode in particular about suppressed feminine energy is going to be for women who identify with feminine energy at your core. So you identify with feminine energy at your core and you desire to be with someone, could be male or female, you desire to be with someone who is in their masculine energy, you desire to partner with someone. So I speak to women who have feminine energy at their core that they identify with. And yes, you still have masculine energy, of course, but at your core is your feminine energy. And I'm going to speak today about why it is so important for us to come into our feminine energy that has been suppressed. So at a high level, the reason why our feminine energy is suppressed is because of societal conditioning, which typically comes from our parents. And that's not their fault. They're not to blame. They were doing the best that they could with what they knew when they were raising us as kids, as little girls. Our parents were also conditioned by their parents because their parents did the best that they could to provide and to support and or maybe lack thereof, but they were probably doing what they knew based off of how it was done for them. And our generation that we're in, millennials and Gen Z, and we're waking up to this, oh, wow, like my parents actually, maybe they live in a different reality than I do. And I fully believe like our reality has totally sped up due to the condition, or sorry, not the condition, but the way that technology works, the connections is what I meant, the connections that we have, that we now have so many shared ideas, so much information available to us. Yes, it's like a double-edged sword, but we now see that our parents lived in survival mode and might still be living in a mentality of survival mode. And we no longer have to survive. We're actually here to thrive. And because we see that other people are thriving more readily, we can see that there's opportunity also available for us to thrive as well. So I'm reading actually right now a book called The Four Agreements. And it calls conditioning this, when we're growing up and we're learning how to behave in life, we're learning what's what. The book calls it domestication, which I love because it's sort of domesticating us into a kind of a cookie cutter way of this is right, this is wrong, this is good, this is bad. I'm sure you were called a good girl at some point in your life. So this is part of the domestication. We learn how to behave. And it comes from more than just our parents too. Or it, first comes from our parents showing us how to survive. And we rely as kids, we're helpless. We need help surviving. So we learn how to survive. And then we learn, from media and from society as a whole, how things work, what has worked for other people. Okay, that worked for you. Okay, it must work for me. Okay, let me implement the 3-step process. Okay, da-da-da-da-da. And so we become domesticated into these behaviors and these ways of thinking. And again, like we're taught to use this energy to survive and to try to get ahead. And we're taught that, that there are goals that we should be achieving and that, this is the way to go about things. So this is conditioning. This is domestication. This is where suppressed feminine energy starts because, unfortunately, many of us live in societies around the world where the popular belief is that feminine energy traits are weak or too much or inefficient and unproductive. And even to take that like a layer deeper, we get told that as feminine beings, we are too sensitive and too emotional. So at a very young age, we learn to suppress those emotions. Or sometimes we go the other way and we rebel and we become very chaotic. And, we might look for ways to even numb the chaos, which would be like drugs or other addictions. And this goes for everyone, not just women. So notice too that like suppressed feminine energy also exists within men because, it's weak. And so for a man to be emotional, men are told, not to cry just as much as women are. And when we don't express our emotions, we further don't allow ourselves to be vulnerable. We only do what we can predict, which is a very mental focus, which is in our mind, which is of the masculine. And we ignore the intuition of our heart and of our body, feeling into our body because we let our brain override our emotions, feeling emotions in the moment and letting those help us make our decisions is how we embody and how we create embodied communication. So I actually have an example of this in my own life. Before I left for Mexico, I had an encounter with a man, and I have had romantic connection with him before. And when I was saying goodbye to him, I got very short and very cold and very like sassy. And it was because I was letting my brain override the emotions of my body, that my body wanted connection. My body was desiring connection. And he had actually shut down my connection, my attempts for connection, because the feminine will attempt to connect. She brings connection. She brings love. So I was attempting to connect with him and he shut me down. And so then I immediately, instead of being like, ouch, that hurts, or like, I'm really wanting connection right now, in what way can you give it to me? Instead of doing that, I let my brain override and I was like, okay, I'm going to be the tough girl. Okay, I'm going to act like I don't care. Okay, I'm going to start to be short with him and I'm just going to move on with my life and pretend like it doesn't bother me. And that is suppressed emotion. And I have been working on this embodied communication of knowing when I'm shutting down, because I can feel it in my body. It's so uncomfortable, and it's literally my body crying for that connection. And I'm getting better at recognizing it quicker. And it takes vulnerability to express that embodied communication. You also want to trust and feel safe in expressing it. I think at the time I didn't trust and feel safe enough to express it. I assumed he wouldn't, give it the reverence that I was wanting. And so I just shut down and I let my brain override it. And what happened was about an hour later, because I don't like who I am when I become that person, and I'm less and less I am that person. And now I'm with a wonderful person who I quite literally say things very upfront and will express my emotions very readily. But it took me about an hour for me to have this self-awareness to be like, hey, this is what happened. I didn't want to leave it on those terms in that way. And I was able to tell him, like, my body was wanting a connection and I let my mind override, and that's what was happening, because that's what I do in order to protect myself and to protect, my vulnerability. And instead of just being vulnerable, or rather, I wouldn't call it maybe even protecting my vulnerability, but protecting myself in a way because I didn't feel safe enough to be vulnerable, but I was suppressing my vulnerability. So the feminine energy invites us to slow down, to find pleasure in the present moment, to really bring in all the sensations, all 5 of our sensations, to feel our emotions, to express those emotions, to tune in and listen to our intuition. to be curious and playful and trust in the unknown. And there's some more things as well, but those are like the main ones that I continually speak to, that I continually practice, that I continually see that like, okay, this is what feminine energy looks like in my life. It means slowing down. It means doing things just for the pleasure's sake. It means feeling. It means allowing the sensation of things to build, whether it's like with food or with touch or connection with someone, or excitement or joy, or even allowing myself to fill with sadness and grief or anger, allowing myself to fully feel it so that it doesn't get clogged up, so that it doesn't get suppressed, because then that like puts, you can imagine like walls up around your heart. And as feminine beings, we want to soften into our heart. Our heart is where we give love. I have 5 ways to use your feminine energy to attract a man. And one of the 5 ways that I speak about, there will be a link to it in the show notes, but one of the 5 ways that I speak about is using your heart, is using your love, unconditional love, and thinking about giving it, like radiating it from your heart to another person. So like I said, this affects men too. But the reason why I'm talking about this specifically for women is because it's crucial for women to identify with feminine energy when they have feminine energy at their core, because we are basically taught to live against our true nature. When feminine energy is said that it's weak and unproductive and inefficient and too much and all the things, or too sensitive, too emotional, we're taught to not trust our own innate nature. And that is a problem. So here's how it shows up. One of the big side effects of suppressed feminine energy is that women have forgotten to prioritize themselves. We're taught to people please, which means we should care about how other people feel before we care about how we feel. And we've literally been taught that we are inferior to men, which all of these things are just, it's not true. While people pleasing might have a very short-term benefit that is only to the other person, it is unsustainable and not beneficial for either party in the long run. People pleasing perpetuates toxic behavior, and it's setting a detrimental precedence for a relationship with someone. It's setting a false premise, because a woman may not have willingly and unconditionally done something for someone if she didn't feel like she had to, if she didn't feel like she had to please them and put them first. And when she does this, when a woman deprioritizes herself and people pleases because she's been conditioned to do this, she's been conditioned to care about other people, she's been conditioned to allow herself to be uncomfortable so that others can be more comfortable. And she thinks in the long run that'll make her comfortable. But when she does this, and you probably do this, so think about if you do some of these people-pleasing things, that actually is devaluing your time and your energy, and it's devaluing yourself. And this is why we end up feeling unworthy, because we're not rooted in our own worthiness, because we've never practiced putting ourselves first. So people-pleasing depletes your self-worth, your self-love, and it desensitizes you as a feminine being to your own intuition and to your emotions. We lose our internal validation. And women and myself, we become so focused on external validation of doing good for another. And the external validation of doing something so that we can be rewarded for it, even if we didn't want to do it. We're like, well, but I got the reward, so I must have done something right. Even though I went against my own true nature, even though I didn't want to do that, I got the reward. Is that fulfilling? Again, maybe in the short term, you're like, yeah, I did a good job. Look at me, the good girl, the overachiever, gold star. But in doing so, we sacrifice our desires. It is not long-term fulfillment. Women self-sacrifice themselves. In relationships, we abandon ourselves. And while I myself and you as a woman and other women we've stood up for ourselves from time to time, it becomes death by 1,000 cuts. So many women are abandoning themselves in relationship simply by putting their partner first, simply by going along with, yeah, okay, if it feels good for you, it must be good for me. Because we haven't built trust within ourselves to leave a situation and say that like that's okay, because we like the external validation of being with someone. I know I've stayed in relationships too long because I convinced myself that it felt better to be in the relationship than to not be in it. Whether it's a toxic relationship or it's a vanilla relationship, meaning it's more or less like your friends, roommates or whatever, it might start out spicy, but then it kind of over time, you're like, well, okay, we're just going along. So whether it's toxic or whether it's vanilla, neither of those types of relationships are serving you or your partner. If you're just people pleasing, you're not actually growing with this person. You're not actually growing in the same direction. You're kind of just going along with what they want. And maybe sometimes they do what you want. And then you're like, okay. And then, so again, it's coming back to like, what is it that you desire? What is it that you want in that relationship? Are you getting it? Are you willing to leave if you're not? If you're just going along with it and abandoning yourself, you're just filling the void. You're filling your own void. So, because if you're looking to fulfill, so if you're not showing up for yourself first, you've got some void. You're unfulfilled and you're looking for things externally. So when you're in a relationship, then you're looking to fulfill the void that you haven't given to yourself because we weren't taught how to show up for ourselves as women. We weren't taught to do what feels serving to us. So we focus on the external validation of wanting our partner to choose us. And then we come up with these scenarios of like, we want to make sure that we're not single at X age because of what it looks like to family and friends. God forbid I'm single at 30 because of what that means about me as a woman. Because what that means about me and my worth, what that means about me and, how I'm able to handle relationships. We make it mean something when it doesn't mean anything. It just means that you're single or that you're in a relationship. And hopefully you're in a happy relationship. Hopefully you're in a serving relationship. Or we fear that it means that we're a failure. And then worst of all, we're trying to prove our worth by wanting to make a partner change for us. Maybe you've gotten into a relationship where you're like, yeah, okay, he's mostly what I'm looking for. This is mostly feeling good. But there's a few things I want to change. And this can be very subtle and can also be very unconscious because of so much of the conditioning and the numbness that we have going on. And I should point this out too, conditioning. So the mind is split into like 5% conscious and 95% unconscious or subconscious, I should say. So subconscious. And that's where the programming of the conditioning or the domestication lives. And we've got to take that 95% and we've got to upgrade that foundation. We've got to come up with new beliefs and new ways of behaving that actually serve us. But when we have 20 to 30 years of conditioning, that's hard to do. So just to finalize my point here too, then we get into a relationship and we want to prove that we are worthy by trying to make a partner change for us, trying to make them who we want them to be. And that is so detrimental to a relationship. It doesn't feel good for you and it won't feel good for the other person. And it's chaotic. We want to get into a relationship, one, both having our own self-awareness of like, yes, there are ways that I can improve and I don't need to change you and you don't need to change me. I am growing and I'm self-aware, and getting into a relationship where partnership is an additive to your life, not something that you need to fill a void. So I've done all of these things. I've focused on the external validation. I've tried to change men. I've, felt the shame of being single at 30 and then at 32 and then, whatever. All of these things. So recognize if this is also something that stories that you tell yourself, beliefs that you tell yourself, beliefs that you hold. I recently did a Instagram post on the 4 beliefs that I held while I was single to help me attract a partner. I started to believe that love didn't have to take years to build, that I could fall in love in 6 months. Maybe it's happening right now. I don't know, I won't know till I know. But there are ways I just chose that it doesn't mean that I'm a failure. It means that I'm living my life, that I'm getting to know me, and that I trust that what's for me won't pass me by, things like that. So when we're suppressing all of this energy, all of these emotions, creating all these stories, when we're operating out of our mind and not using our body, this is why we get so mentally overthinking and analyzing as women, is because we're using so much of our mind rather than ever using our body to help us make a decision. So where does the energy go? If we're not using the feminine energy, if we're suppressing the emotions, where does it go? Well, it has effects on our body, because emotions are energy in motion, and if we're not expressing them, we are suppressing them, so they're getting stuck. And this manifests in many ways. So when we are going against our true nature as feminine women, it's like we're swimming upstream. We know it doesn't feel right, but after 20, 30, 40 years, however many years of conditioning, until you become aware of this, you're numb to it. You've accepted that this is the way it is, that feeling resistance is normal, that life is hard. It's not normal. Not only is your body becoming numb, which means you're not sensitized to your intuition and your emotions because you're just stuffing them down, your subconscious programming in your mind is made up of all these masculine traits. It favors masculine traits, and then it favors masculine traits so much, it becomes our default. And when it becomes our default, it becomes this wounded masculine energy. So while we're also suppressing our feminine energy, and that puts us in our wounded feminine, then we're also in our wounded masculine because we're using too much masculine energy. And then our entire life is made up of wounded masculine and wounded feminine. We're suppressing our emotions. We're not being vulnerable. We're, focused on outcomes and achievement orientation, which puts us in an individualistic mindset rather than creating community. And then we're in our masculine where we're overthinking, overanalyzing, afraid to do anything because if we don't see that, it's safe and that it's predictable and that we've got the next 10 steps, we're not doing it. So then we limit our possibilities that are available to us. We literally cut off the flow of possibility. And then we become aggressive, and then aggressive in in a competitive way, overly competitive. And again, some of these things can be very subtle. So suppressed feminine energy manifests in our life as chaos and confusion and never truly feeling fulfilled. We get attached to the idea of partners because we're so focused on a partner, meaning that we did a good job, we got the outcome. And we blame others for our desires not being met. We're not even voicing them because we're taught that our desires are wrong or that they're risky. So I won't voice them because that might make someone else wrong. And if I make someone else wrong, well, then I'm not in people-pleasing mode, and that's not a good girl. And then there are physical manifestations, such as low libido, lack of pleasure and sensation, as in literally numbness or pain during sex. Because we're so disconnected from our feminine energy, we're so disconnected from our own pleasure, we're so disconnected from our womb. And then we even get physical pain or a condition of some sort in our body. And it also suppresses our authentic expression, even our sensual and sexual expression. Because God forbid you be the sexy slut or whatever. Or you could go totally the opposite direction and you could be so far the other way, rebelling and maybe over-expressing your sexuality. And we're going to get into integrity, but the idea is to use your feminine energy to be in integrity. So everybody's going to have a different expression. The thing is that you've got to own what it is for you. But when your feminine energy is suppressed, you're not actually expressing from an authentic, integral place. So in the 4 Agreements that I'm reading, the book, highly recommend, it's talking about how we begin to domesticate ourselves, how we suppress our own authentic expression as women. We get so good at the conditioning that other people gave to us that we domesticate ourselves. We start to identify with new things as, okay, either that's good or that's bad, or I should do this or I shouldn't do that. That's in line with this and not in line with that. We auto-domesticate ourselves into being the good girl or rebelling and lashing out. Because both of those, whether you're the good girl suppressing or the rebel lashing out, both of those are wounded feminine energy. Both of those are based in not trusting the feminine. So we look for external validation and achievements and attention, or we don't have our healthy way of feeling our emotions. So we rebel, we lash out, we create chaos. Again, we crave attention. So believe it or not, I've had all of these symptoms of suppressed feminine energy. I'll have to do a separate episode on my experience of all the symptoms, even like numbness in sex, pain in my body, chaos in dating. I would happily share that. So I'm going to end it here so that I can keep it as short as possible. Part 2 will be about the opportunity of suppressed feminine energy. So a few things here for you. If there are specifics in this episode that you're like, ooh, I want to know more about that. I've got a question on that. What does she mean by that? DM me on Instagram. I'm at Lauren Likes It Like That. DM me on Instagram. Let me know what you want to go deeper into. I'd be happy to do an episode on it. If you want to start to tap into your energy, I have a quick training. It's like 15 minutes long. It's called 5 Ways to Use Your Feminine Energy to Attract a Man. Because when you tap into your feminine energy, fully expressing your authentic expression, fully using your energy for you, rather than just stuffing it down and never giving it the light of day, you become magnetic and you start to attract a man in real life, even if you don't want to use the dating apps. I'm all about not using the dating apps. I have not used the dating apps in years, and I've dated multiple men that I've met in real life. So I'll put that link in the show notes if you want to get my 5 ways. The 5 ways are a really good foundation for starting to tap into your feminine energy. And then I have a Facebook group called Feminine Foundation. It's a beautiful community of growing women. More women are joining every day. And we are building magnetism, stepping into feminine energy, stepping into vulnerability, sharing from experience, allowing ourselves to be seen. And then when we do that, we allow others to see themselves in us as well. So I'd love for you to be part of the community, Feminine Foundation. Then if you have any questions, DM me at Lauren Likes It Like That on Instagram. And let me know what it is that I can dive in further for you on this. And we'll see you in part 2. Thanks for joining, babe.